Hello students, let's read the problem. And it says, what is the y-intercept of the graph whose exponential function is f of x equals 6 parentheses 2.5 to the x power? Okay, so what is it that they're asking me to find? Well, they want for us to find the y-intercept. And of course, they're giving us the function for that one, right? Okay, so what about if before we even try to maybe graph it or do anything like that, what about if we go back to the definition of y-intercept? Because that's going to give you a huge clue of what to do. Okay, so the y-intercept, and no, I'm not going to ask you to graph it completely. Okay, but I would really like for you to have an idea, first of all, what does it mean by the y-intercept? Well, this is my x and this is my y-axis, right? So if I'm looking for the y-intercept, that means that I'm looking for this point that is gonna cross the y-axis right there. Is that right? So if that's the point that I'm looking for, and it could be there, it could be down here, it could be here, we're not really focusing on that position, but I do want to know one thing. What do you know about the x value for any of those points? The x value for any of those points will be a 0. So x has to be 0 in order for me to find the y-intercept. Is that right? Okay, very good. So we're going to erase this. We're going to come back to that. And I'm thinking that maybe by now you kind of like identify some special or some pieces of your exponential functions, right? But if you haven't, then this is going to be a great time for you guys to know that. Okay, so I'm going to write down my function. And what I am going to do is I'm going to replace x with a 0. Why? Because I know that if I'm looking for the y, now remember, f of x is the same as y. Very good. So I'm going to write it down again. This was x. So instead of writing x, I'm going to write down a 0. Because I know that the y-intercept means a point that has to be somewhere here on the y-axis. Is that right? Okay, so let's work it out. So what happens when you raise something to the 0 power? You always gonna get a 1. No matter what number is raised to the 0 power, you always gonna get a 1. So you gotta remember that, okay? Anything raised to the 0 gives me a 1. That's the reason why I'm gonna replace it with a 1. And 6 times 1 is 6. So this is what it means. The point that I'm looking for is when x is 0, the y value is a 6. And I'm not sure that you can make the maybe the connection right away, but take a look over here. Isn't this 6 the one that is my a value? And I hope that you know what I mean by a value. There is any question that we can write down. I'm going to write it down up here, which is a times b to the x power. That's my exponential function, right? So a is my y-intercept, okay? So look at the answer choices, and my answer for this should be letter D. Very good. And I'm going to ask you to do kind of like a sketch over here for this graph. I know that this graph, it's a exponential growth because b is greater than 1. And if b is greater than 1, then this will be a growth. Very good. So now I know that my function, it might not be exactly perfect, but it's going to be something like this. Okay, I just want you to see more or less how your function is going to look like. And this point here, guess what? This point here is going to be 6 right there. That's your y-intercept. Okay, very good.